The radio crackled in Officer Emma Hayes' patrol car as she navigated the winding roads of Blackwood Forest. It was supposed to be a quiet shift, a routine patrol through the backwoods where little ever happened. The late afternoon sun filtered through towering pines, casting long shadows across the pavement. Then she saw it. A small, stumbling shape emerged from the dense underbrush onto the road ahead. Emma's foot hit the brake instinctively, her heart lurching as she recognized what it was: a bear cub. Alone. That wasn't normal. Cubs this young didn't wander far from their mothers. Emma scanned the tree-line, expecting to see the hulking form of an adult bear barreling out after it. But the forest remained eerily silent. The cub hesitated in the middle of the road, its dark eyes locking onto hers. It was trembling, its tiny chest rising and falling in frantic, shallow breaths. Then, to her astonishment, it moved toward her patrol car, not away. Emma exhaled, reaching for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Hayes. I've got a lone bear cub on Highway 17 near mile marker 22. No sign of the mother. Stand by." She unbuckled her seatbelt, stepping cautiously onto the pavement. The cub was only a few feet away now, whimpering softly. Emma had seen bears in distress before, usually after being separated from their mothers, but something about this one felt different. It wasn't just lost. It was terrified. "Hey, little one," she murmured, crouching low to avoid looking like a threat. "Where's your mama?" The cub let out a tiny, desperate cry. Then, to Emma's shock, it turned and began toddling back toward the trees, pausing only to look back at her. It wanted her to follow. Every instinct in Emma's body screamed at her to be cautious. Bears, even cubs, were unpredictable. But there was no mistaking the urgency in the animal's behavior. It wasn't just running. It was leading her somewhere. Hand on her holster, Emma followed. The moment she stepped past the tree line, the world shifted. The golden light of the setting sun barely penetrated the thick canopy, and the air carried an unnatural stillness. Emma's boots crunched softly against the undergrowth as she moved deeper into the shadows, the cub trotting ahead, glancing back every few seconds to make sure she was keeping up. Then she smelled it, the coppery scent of blood. Emma's breath hitched, and her fingers instinctively tightened around the grip of her sidearm. She'd been a cop long enough to recognize the metallic tang in the air. Something or someone was bleeding nearby. A few yards ahead, the cub stopped abruptly, its tiny body shivering. Emma's eyes followed its gaze, and then she saw it. A massive, dark shape lay sprawled across the forest floor. A full-grown black bear. The mother. But something was wrong. Even from several feet away, Emma could see the deep, jagged wounds along the bear's side, gashes too precise to be from an animal attack. The surrounding earth was disturbed, paw prints smeared with blood, as if there had been a struggle. Emma's stomach twisted. This wasn't nature. This was something else. The cub let out another mournful cry, nudging its mother's limp form, but there was no response. Emma swallowed hard and reached for her radio with a trembling hand. "Dispatch. I think we have a problem." The silence was deafening. Officer Emma Hayes knelt beside the massive bear, the weight of the moment pressing against her ribs like a vice. The mother was barely breathing, her thick fur matted with blood, her massive body unmoving. The cub whimpered beside her, nudging its mother with its snout, but there was no response. Emma's fingers hovered just above the bear's side, hesitating before making contact. Her years on the force had trained her to respond to human emergencies, accidents, violence, disappearances. But this was different. This was raw, unfiltered wilderness, and something about it sent a chill crawling down her spine. She pressed the button on her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Hayes. I have a wounded adult black bear off Highway 17, approximately half a mile into Blackwood Forest. Multiple lacerations, possible poaching incident. Requesting immediate contact with Fish and Wildlife. Static." Emma frowned. The signal was weak out here, but she should have at least gotten a response. She tried again. Nothing. A gust of wind rustled through the canopy, sending brittle leaves spiraling down around her. The evening light was fading fast, the air growing heavier with the damp chill of nightfall. She scanned the area, her senses on high alert. Something wasn't right. The bear's wounds weren't the kind made by another animal. They were too sharp, too deliberate. Claw marks were ragged, tearing through flesh in erratic patterns. But these cuts were different, clean, deep, and precise. Made by a blade. Emma's pulse quickened. Poachers. She stood, instinctively placing herself between the cub and the surrounding forest, her hand resting lightly on the grip of her service weapon. A snapping twig. Emma spun toward the sound, her breath catching in her throat. The undergrowth was thick, tangled with ferns and fallen branches, but she saw it, movement. A shadow slipping between the trees, just beyond her line of sight. Blackwood PD. She called out, her voice firm. Identify yourself. No response. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. The cub let out a fearful whimper, pressing itself against its mother's side. Emma reached for the flashlight on her belt and flicked it on, the beam slicing through the growing darkness. Nothing. The forest was too dense, too good at swallowing light. A metallic glint caught her eye. Just beyond the bear's body, half buried in the dirt, something reflected her flashlight's glow. Emma stepped closer, crouching to examine it. A knife. The handle was black, the blade long and serrated. Dried blood stained the metal. Her stomach turned. This wasn't some careless hunter's lost weapon. This was evidence of a crime. The bear hadn't been attacked. It had been butchered. And whoever had done it might still be here. Emma's grip tightened around the flashlight as she scanned the trees once more. She needed to get out. Get the cub to safety. Get back up. But as she took a step back toward the road, something new caught her attention. Something far worse than the knife. A second trail of blood. Not from the mother bear. Not from the cub. Something, or someone else had been bleeding here. And the tracks led deeper into the woods. Emma swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to get back in her patrol car and call for help. But then the cub did something that made her decision for her. It turned from its mother's side, looked up at Emma with wide, pleading eyes, and started walking down the bloodstained path, straight into the darkness. Would you like any changes or adjustments? The cub disappeared into the trees, its small form swallowed by the shadows. Emma cursed under her breath, her pulse hammering as she moved after it, stepping over the mother bear's massive body. The scent of blood was stronger now, thick in the damp air, mingling with the earthy musk of pine and rotting leaves. The second trail of blood was fresh. It wasn't smeared like the mother bear's, which suggested that whatever or whoever had left it was still moving when they passed through. She shouldn't be doing this. Not alone. Every fiber of her training told her to retreat, to call for backup. But her radio was dead. The cub was leading her deeper into the woods, and something in her gut told her she didn't have time to wait. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the narrow path ahead. The cub was just a few steps in front of her, its tiny body tense, ears flicking at every sound. It wasn't just leading her. It was afraid. Emma's fingers hovered over the grip of her firearm as she followed. She wasn't just tracking a wounded animal anymore. She was tracking a crime, asterisk, asterisk. Then she saw it, a clearing. The trees parted suddenly, revealing a stretch of dirt and rock at the base of a steep incline. The air was still, unnervingly quiet. No wind, no birds, just the faint, rhythmic hum of the forest settling into night. In the center of the clearing, half hidden in the tall grass, was something that made Emma's blood run cold. A trap. It was crude but deadly, a steel-jawed bear trap, the kind that was outlawed years ago. And next to it, glinting under her flashlight beam, were more signs of human presence. A cigarette but still fresh, the remnants of boot prints stamped into the mud. Someone had been here. Recently. The mother bear hadn't just been attacked. She had fought for her life. Emma's stomach twisted. The deep gashes along the bear's side, the disturbed earth, the desperate, erratic trail of blood. She had tried to protect her cub. She had tried to fight back. And she had failed. The cub let out a soft whimper, stopping at the edge of the clearing. It didn't dare step forward. That's when Emma noticed something else. The second trail of blood, the one she had been following, didn't end here. It continued past the trap, leading toward the base of the incline, toward something large, slumped against the rock wall. Emma's breath caught as she stepped closer. It was a man. His clothes were torn, his face pale in the dim light. Blood soaked the front of his flannel shirt, spreading outward in dark, sticky patches. His right leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, his foot caught in another hidden trap. He was barely conscious, his breaths ragged and shallow. A hunter? A poacher? Emma's mind raced, but one thing was clear. He wasn't the only danger out here. Because if this man had been left behind, bleeding and broken, that meant someone else had done this to him. And whoever they were still out there. The man groaned, his body slumped against the jagged rock wall, his foot still mangled in the steel jaws of the trap. His face was pale, slick with sweat, and his chest rose and fell in uneven, labored breaths. Emma tightened her grip on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. Every instinct told her to stay on guard. She had seen enough in her years on the force to know that victims weren't always innocent. She knelt beside him cautiously. "Hey, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Blood oozed from a deep wound in his abdomen, pooling into the dirt beneath him. Emma reached for her radio again, knowing it was futile, but still she pressed the button. "Dispatch, this is Officer Hayes. I have a seriously injured male, possible poacher, trapped at the base of Blackwood Ridge. I need medical assistance and backup." Static. Still nothing. She clenched her jaw. This wasn't just a dead zone. Something was interfering with her signal. That thought sent another ripple of unease down her spine. She turned back to the man. "Who did this to you?" His head lolled to the side. Then, with what little strength he had left, he lifted a trembling hand and pointed past her. Into the trees. Emma's pulse spiked. She swung her flashlight in that direction, scanning the thick forest, but all she saw were shadows shifting between the trunks. The wind had picked up, rustling the branches, making it impossible to tell if something was moving, or if her mind was playing tricks on her. The cub let out a small, frightened whimper and pressed itself against her leg. Something was out there, and it was watching. Emma rose slowly, her hand inching toward her service weapon. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a crunch. Not an animal. A footstep. Someone was out there, just beyond the reach of her light. Emma's heartbeat pounded in her ears as she weighed her options. She could try to free the man, but that would leave her vulnerable. She could stay put and wait for help, but help wasn't coming. Or she could face whatever was out there, alone. Another step. Closer this time. Emma drew her gun. "Come out where I can see you." No answer. But then, just for a moment, her flashlight caught something. A figure, tall, clad in dark clothing, standing motionless between the trees. Watching her, her breath hitched. Then, before she could react, the figure vanished. Emma swallowed hard. They weren't alone in these woods. And whoever else was out here didn't want to be found. The forest was no longer just dark, it felt alive. Emma stood frozen, her gun raised, her breath tight in her chest. The figure she had seen was gone, swallowed by the shifting shadows of the trees. But she knew better than to believe she was alone. The cub pressed against her leg, trembling. The wounded man slumped against the rock, his breathing ragged. The air was thick with the scent of blood and damp earth. And in the distance, just faint enough to make her doubt her own ears, came another sound. A slow, deliberate exhale. Someone was watching, waiting. Emma took a step back, her boot crunching on dry leaves. She forced herself to stay calm, her training kicking in. Whoever was out there had the advantage. They knew these woods. They had already left one man to die in a trap. And now they were hunting again. Her mind raced. She needed to get the injured man out, but freeing him from the trap would take time. Time she didn't have. Another sound. Closer this time. A footstep. Then another. Emma spun, her flashlight sweeping the trees. Blackwood PD. "Show yourself." Silence. But then something changed. The shadows shifted, and a figure emerged, a man dressed in camouflage, stepping out from behind a thick pine. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his stance told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't running. He wasn't afraid. He was hunting. And she was the prey. Emma's grip on her gun tightened. "Put your hands where I can see them." The man didn't move. Behind her, the wounded man let out a weak, choked sound. Emma risked a glance over her shoulder. Just a second, no more. But when she turned back, the figure was gone. Her stomach dropped. He was toying with her. A branch snapped behind her. Another one to her left. More than one. Emma's pulse thundered. She had no backup, no radio signal, and an injured man who wouldn't survive the night without help. The poachers weren't just killing bears. They were willing to kill anyone who got in their way. She had to move. Now, Emma bent down quickly, placing a hand on the injured man's shoulder. "We have to get you out of here." His eyes fluttered open. You shouldn't have come," he rasped. "What?" He swallowed hard. "They don't leave loose ends." The realization hit her like a gut punch. This wasn't about the bears anymore. They weren't just poachers. They were covering their tracks. A rustling sound, too close. Emma grabbed the cub and hoisted it under her arm, its tiny body shivering against her. She took hold of the man's arm, trying to lift him, but he let out a strangled cry of pain. The trap had done too much damage. He couldn't walk. "Damn it," she hissed. She had to decide, fight or flee. Then, a sharp was cut through the air. An arrow. It embedded itself into the tree inches from her face. A warning shot. Emma's blood ran cold. They weren't playing games anymore. They were hunting her. The arrow quivered in the tree, its black shaft barely visible in the dim. Emma's breath came fast and shallow. Her mind screamed at her to run, but she couldn't. Not yet. She had the cub tucked under her arm and an injured man who wouldn't survive if she left him behind. Another movement in the trees. A flicker of motion. They were closing in. Her instincts took over. She had to act. She crouched beside the wounded man, her voice low but urgent. "Can you shoot?" His breath rattled, his eyes glassy from pain. Not like this." Emma's jaw clenched. She was on her own. Another snap of twigs. Closer. She shifted, pressing the cub against her chest to keep it calm. Then she grabbed a fistful of dirt and flung it into the air, hoping to obscure her position just enough to make her next move. The first shot rang out before she could react. A gunshot. Bark exploded off the tree beside her. She spun, dropping low, her own weapon coming up in a fluid motion. She didn't fire. Asterisk, asterisk, not yet. Asterisk, asterisk. She needed to see them. Then she did. Two figures in the shadows. One holding a rifle, the other moving silently with a hunting knife glinting in his hand. Poachers. Killers. Asterisk, asterisk. Emma didn't wait. She fired. The crack of her gun shattered the night. The man with the rifle dove for cover, but she wasn't aiming to kill. Asterisk, asterisk. She was aiming to create an opening. Asterisk, asterisk. She grabbed the injured man under his arm and hauled. He cried out in pain, but he moved. That was all she needed. "Come on," she gritted out, dragging him toward the trees. Another shot whizzed past. Too close. The cub whimpered. Emma's mind raced. She needed an escape route. Then she saw it, asterisk, asterisk, a slope leading down to a creek. Asterisk, asterisk, if they could make it there, the water might cover their tracks. She fired another shot blindly behind her, keeping the pursuers at bay. Then, without hesitation, she pulled the man with her and ran. Branches tore at her uniform. The ground was uneven, slick with leaves and blood. The man stumbled, nearly collapsing, but she didn't let go. The cub clung to her, its small body trembling. The gunfire stopped. That was worse than hearing it. They weren't shooting anymore. They were following. Emma didn't look back. She half-dragged, half-carried the man until they reached the creek. Without hesitation, she plunged in, the icy water biting at her skin. The cub let out a sharp cry, but she held it tight. "Stay with me," she urged the man. He groaned, but nodded weakly. They waded downstream, keeping low, moving as fast as his broken body allowed. The forest loomed around them, thick with mist and danger. Emma's heart pounded. Then, above them, a light, headlights, a car, a road. They were close. She forced herself to move faster. The cold was numbing, but survival pushed her forward. They just had to make it. A final stretch of trees. A break in the brush. Then, the roar of an engine. Headlights flooded the creek bed, and Emma raised her free hand, waving desperately. A voice shouted. Doors slammed, and suddenly help was there. The poachers had vanished into the darkness. For now. But as Emma collapsed onto the bank, gasping, the cub safe in her arms and the injured man barely conscious beside her, she knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not yet.